Good evening, everybody. Welcome to All About Guitar. We have a great show for you tonight. Tonight, we're going to get a little sneak peek on some new instruments that are coming out from Form Factor Audio. My very dear friend, I want to welcome back Gary Rudenko from the Amp Shop Bass Exchange. He's the one that's introduced me to Form Factor. We've had them on before on the show, and their amps are incredible. Their speaker systems are incredible, and they have a new model of bass amp for both 500 watt and 1000 watt amp, and we're going to take a look at the 500 watt. But let me introduce everybody that's here. My good friend Doug is here helping me out, but Andre Lomov.
Yep.
He's here from Form Factor. Welcome to the show. It's good to have you in
much.
here. Victor Broden's going to be our demo guy, bass player extraordinaire, and he makes these basses sound amazing. So, I want you to go ahead and explain a little more about the bass amps, because they're very clean, very high power, and in conjunction with their speakers, if I'm correct, the speakers are like full range monitors, right?
Well, they're still bass cabs, but the way that we took the approach to it initially was to kind of model it. We have a company and a factory that builds professional PA systems. So we kind of took a lot of those same components and we basically assembled them. I mean, obviously some modifications for the woofers and the compression drivers, but the idea, the manufacturing process is very similar. And so the cabs are built really well. And I think even if a few of our competitors have started using the same transducers as we do, not tweaked, we have them custom made, but similar manufacturing. And it still doesn't sound the same. And the idea, is not in the woofers, it's the cabinetry itself. So we basically took a different approach. We said, okay, we're going to start using the same PA techniques, PA building techniques, put the same components in, and it allowed the bass players to actually hear what their tone sounded like, which was incredible. It adds almost zero coloration.
Right, but your speakers are more full range than a normal bass speaker.
I think they are. Yeah, you can.
No. Speakers are bass speakers.
Oh,
right. He's saying like full, like they have a compression driver in them, which is most of the time everyone else uses tweeters.
Yes.
So you have a bit more of a frequency response, but they're not a PA speaker. They are a bass speaker, but they're more, to your point, they're closer to a full range than anything else, but they're still a true bass cab. And so the same kind of went with the same sort of technology went into the amp, and this is the new Bi500DI, and the DI is for direct out. So we released this several years ago, got really great feedback, but the only kind of request was a direct out, a balanced XLR. And so we added that. And the same philosophy applies. There's really very, little to no coloration of any kind. You're hearing the actual bass.
Right. It's a pretty transparent sounding amp.
Yeah, exactly. That was the whole point. Because the whole point is, you spend a lot of time setting up your bass a specific way, paying a lot of money in some cases for that, and then all you're hearing is the character of this one amp, which is, I think, a bit unfair. So I think a lot of players, when they first plug in, they're always like, whoa, it's like, what am I hearing? You're actually hearing your bass for the first time, which is incredible. So
right. Now, do me a favor, pick this up and flip it around to the camera, and let's just go through a little bit of what's on the front panel.
Yeah, Gary, you want to do that so I can see?
Okay.
No, I'll hold it and you can.
Okay, so we're right over there.
Yeah.
So you're looking at, there's a gain control.
Yeah.
And then the bass, the middle, which is switchable over
exactly.
here.
So you're picking which frequency you're affecting with that middle switch.
And I moved it a little bit to, I can't see what my frequency is, but it's at 2.0. I think it's 2000 kilohertz, I think. And then there's treble. There's a limiter in it. And then the master control. And then there's a mute, which is very cool. And then down here, there's the different inputs. So there's an active and passive input.
Correct.
Tuner for your tuner. Send and return for your effects. And then, is this one headphones?
Yeah.
Headphone.
Okay, it's covering the headphone.
Yeah.
So it's got all the things necessary for a studio person to I'll go ahead and show this. Might as well turn it around to the back.
Yeah.
So you have the post EQ, pre EQ, and then your speaker outs in the back.
And then the power, which is a power console.
And it locks, which is very cool.
It doesn't.
It's a simple design in terms of it's not a lot of fancy menus and stuff, but it does what it needs to do. And it's very, the controls are very
Intuitive.
Yeah.
That was the whole point. I mean, we weren't complicating anything or reinventing the wheel. And when it's muted, you could clearly see it's muted and glows, and it's a giant button. I always thought it was kind of weird on some manufacturers. They choose to do a tiny mute button, or worse yet, in the back, which is the worst thing in the world when you're doing a stressful gig and you're just jumping on stage. And you don't know why you don't have sound. It's like, no, you can see. There it is. It's the mute button.
So
it glows green. It's
and
neon green.
It's nice, and it's everything's accessible. The send and receive is all in the front, so it's pretty, which is handy if you need to. I mean, it's nice to have stuff in the back, but in the front, especially with the tuner, you just can put it right there, and it's.
The idea is everything you need during a show is in the front, and everything that you deal with before you start playing is in the back. So you never have to, as Poncho used to say, he's like, you never show your butt to the audience, because you're diving behind, doing something that looks awkward. Right. So you can look cool still and look at the audience while you're tweaking things. So,
Victor, try it with a pick. I'm curious how if it growls with that.
So I never really play pick with only the bridge pickup. It might work because this has a lot of low end. So this is my really bright pick.
Okay. And what's interesting now is the new ones have the dual has two direct outs, and
Correct.
one's pre EQ and one's post EQ, which is very cool.
yeah.
Now I have it set up post, so you're hearing the EQ in there. It's not just, but literally at pre EQ, you're getting straight.
Yeah, it's just a clean signal.
It's
And a
just
lot
the
of
bass.
times, depending on your live situation, it's useful to have those two features, especially if you're a guy like Victor. You never know where you're going to end up, small venue, large venue,
Right.
stadium. It's good to because if you're doing a stadium gig, you really just want to let the sound engineer decide what the bass sounds like in the
Right.
room.
And
Sometimes
it's a great traveling because it's light and it's small.
No, the thing weighs nothing.
It's pretty much you can with the direct outs, you can let the sound system do the work, but it has enough for you so you can get one or two cap. It'll power enough if you need
the
stage
500
sound.
the 500 watt actually it puts out an insane amount of sound if you for something this size and this weight, even at this power rating, because our power ratings are rather conservative. We don't exaggerate them. That is what the module benches at, as you call it. There's a bench test you can do. And so it's a true 500 or a true 1,000 watts, which actually is a lot of power. But the reason people are so used to being like, oh, I need 2 refrigerator cabs and 2, SVT, whatever rigs, because they're so used to unfair ratings where people kind of manufacturers exaggerate a little bit what the rating is. And so you think 1,000, I don't know what that sounds like, but a form factor 1,000 watts sounds like a full 1,000 watts, and it's a lot of sound.
It's plenty of power.
It's plenty of power.
Now, what else is besides the power? What's the difference between the 500 and 1,000?
That's it. It's the same exact everything else. Same exact preamp section, same exact controls, same exact circuitry. It's just double the power, and that's it. And for a lot of guys, that's not, guys and girls, it's not necessary for them to do the 1,000 watt. They like 500. They, pair it up with like a single 12, and they're happy with that. It just depends on your application. But if you're playing a lot of bigger shows, 1,000 watts.
For most club gigs or local gigs, smaller venues, 500 is plenty for anything, pretty much.
Exactly. And the thing is, the weight is very similar. And I mean, you're really looking at it was about an inch bigger in the 1,000 watt.
Oh, it's an inch deeper.
It's an inch deeper. That's it. That's the only difference. So if you have a case for this or anything else, you can pretty much use the same case. It's just pretty much the same footprint. And it looks identical from the front.